It's about 10 o'clock at night, and I walk out of my apartment. It's dark outside. It's cold. It's your classic BC winter night. There's about 2 inches of snow on the ground, and it's snowing all around. I walk over to my car. I have to prop open the door because, of course, it's rained before, and it's frozen shut. I get in, I start the car, no problem. I got the brush out of the car, close the door, get out, brush out the windshield, off the tail light and the headlight, toss in the back seat, get in the car, take a deep breath, put it in reverse, back out of my parking spot, drive out of the parking lot from my apartment condo, take a left, take another left. And before I know it, I'm on some of the main roads in Victoria. There's pretty much no one out. It's quiet. There's no buses. There's really not any cars. There's no people. It seems like it's just me, like the zombie apocalypse has just happened and it's winter. And as I drive through the roads, I don't have the radio on. It's quiet. It's so quiet. And I find myself in my own mind, not really thinking anything. I can hear the snow underneath my tires, you know that sound where your tires go over the snow. I can't replicate it, but it's very unique. As I'm driving through town, I pull up, I'm coming towards a set of lights. And the lights turns from green to yellow, so I start to slow down, from yellow to red, and I stop at the intersection. I have both hands on the steering wheel, and I'm looking out the windshield, and the wipers going back and forth, moving the melted snow off my windshield. I can see the snow falling down on the hood of my car, the racing stripes and all. It was really great. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see her. She starts to walk across the intersection. Beautiful blonde hair, freckles across her face, a smile across her face, like it's a smile that you never forget, you know? And these blue eyes that are like frozen ice. Like, you know, when you look down into the lake and it's just that pure blue. And as she walks closer to in front of my car, time kind of slows, and I recognize her. And all I think is, that's the woman I love. I love you. And it was the woman that I loved. She was the woman that I had been seeing for 4 years. And as she walked in front of the car, she recognized it. And she started to smile even more, because she knew who it was. And as she looked in the car, she saw me, and her hand came up and started to wave. And in that moment, it was like time was going through molasses, and the snow started to fall slower. And as her hand came up, the expression on her face changed really quickly, from happiness to horror. And I could see the pain move across her face. I could feel the pain in her heart. And she looked, and her hand, instead of waving, cupped in front of her face. She started to move away. She started to sob. Her sobbing turned into crying, and her best friend who was there with her started to console her. She walked past the car and off onto the sidewalk. The light turned green, and white-knuckled, I moved my foot from the brake to the accelerator and began to drive forward through the intersection slowly. And as I did that, I heard a voice that said, "Hey, are you okay?" It was faint at first. Then, "Hey, are you okay?" And a little bit louder. And all of a sudden, "Hey, are you okay?" And I looked to my right, and there, sitting in my passenger side seat, dark hair, brown eyes, dark features, the woman who I had been having an affair with for over a year and a half, who she knew about, who she had found out about. That marked a really distinct moment in my life. a very profound moment where my worlds came crashing together. My dichotomy between families and friends and the life that I had been living as a construction worker who put himself through opera school. These two seemingly different worlds, everything that I had done up until that moment was separated. I had everything separated. And in that moment, it collided together in a very dramatic Hollywood-style fashion, or at least it seemed at the time. And like most people who shared the stage with me tonight, I had an incredible amount of shame around my experience. I felt guilty. My self-worth as a man was in my relationship, but I had set myself up to fail because I put my self-worth in something that I wasn't living into. I started to realize that there was this big part of myself and big part of my identity that I was so ashamed of. And instead of reaching out for support, instead of reaching out for help like I thought most people did, I decided to not tell anybody. She left, my career went on pause, and I spent the next 3 weeks living out of the back of my 2007 Pontiac G5, which is not comfortable. I stayed there because I was so ashamed of who I thought I was and what I had done that there was no way I could tell the people who I loved, and so I pushed them the furthest away. My mom would call and I wouldn't answer. My dad would call and I wouldn't answer. My friends would call and I wouldn't answer. I would move from parking lot to parking lot. And finally one night, laying in the back of my G5, staring out the window at the stars, I realized that I had two options. One, I could end things, and no one had to know. No one had to know what I had been doing. No one had to know that I was a complete failure. No one had to know the level of shame that I had carried around and that I thought that I was an absolute fucking monster. No one had to know those things. I could just hide it. I could keep hiding it. I could just keep putting it behind me, stuffing it down, hiding it in the closet, and nobody had to know. And option number two was I told people that I got real with them. And after what felt like hours of deciding what I was going to do, I came to the conclusion that option number one didn't seem like a great idea. That was my balcony moment in the back of a G5. So I took a year and a half off and I started talking to people. I went and got help. I started talking to my friends, and I started connecting with the other men in my life and letting them know, and women, letting them know what was going on. And what I was met with was a lot of the guys were suffering with the same things. They had these pieces of themselves that they were so ashamed about that they didn't want to talk about. Their business was failing. Their relationship was failing. They felt like a failure as a father. They felt like a shit husband. And yet they weren't telling people. And so I decided that in a conversation with one of my best friends, who, after I laid everything out on the table with him, broke down crying and said, "Thank you. I want you to know that I tried to hang myself a month ago." And I was like, how is it that we are so close and yet so far away? How is it that I know everything about you except the most important fucking thing? How is that? And I got very present to the fact that it's in these moments of humanity that actually matter. It's in these moments where we get to connect and bear the parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to see, that we really connect, that we really experience a sense of like love and appreciation that is far deeper and far greater than we can possibly imagine. I didn't really have a specific like how I wanted to end this, but what comes to mind is a quote from Carl Jung. I went on for a year and a half to study cognitive behavioral therapy and NLP and positive psychology and try and get my shit together, and then worked at Apple for 3 years, 4 years, ran the Vancouver division, and started an organization called ManTalks, which focuses in on men's personal professional development, and is now all over North America. But after studying Carl Jung, he talks a lot about these parts of ourselves that we don't want to integrate. He talks about archetypes, he talks about the shadow, and it really got me present to, we are a combination of so many different parts. You know, and some parts we love. Some parts we love putting them out there, right? I'm charismatic. I love putting that out there. Maybe I should put more of that out there, right? And we choose these parts of ourselves that we identify with as good or great or lovable, and that's what we show to the world. And then we have these parts of ourselves that we've identified are not lovable, are monsters, are broken, and we try and hide those. And then they grow and they grow and they grow and they grow. Right? And they get bigger and louder and bigger and louder, and they take up more space until eventually, like in my case, they become your entire identity, because all I thought was I was a monster. Thank you.